If you haven't posted your questions, please do so. Or if you're really into coffee, then leave now, never return. Yeah, thank you. I think we're all so scared now, well scared that we are in our code repositories checking out all our mistakes done, but okay. I think this is quite interesting questions. Okay. You can take maybe a breather, Zak, or save your phone. I think this is for you mainly. Zak, obviously, you can comment. So I'll read the whole question. Did you hear already that on some Chinese solar inverters, some software was found which should not have been there? So what do you think about vulnerabilities of our digitally operated solar and conventional energy systems?
Wow. Yeah, the good thing about energy as a sector, we try to be in charge of the whole country. So we need to look at different sectors and their problems differently. Usually, the energy operators are very diligent in trying to make sure that there is relatively little cyber risk in their operations, and that they are quite conservative of the kinds of things that they introduce into their systems, especially when the systems are internet-facing in any way. Having said that, the renewable energy sector is the newest ones, and usually when you have new players entering fields, they might not have the same standards as the more experienced players. In some cases this is a good thing, in some it's not such a bad thing, not such a good thing. So I think this is a good example of a situation where if you are providing a service and it turns into something that people rely on, energy is an excellent example of that. There are certainly some checks that you simply can't omit from that. There are always claims about backdoors in technology X and technology Y and bad people putting bad code in there. I know usually the Occam's razor solution is that people do crap code and they do mistakes. So I don't know about this particular case, but 9 times out of 10, I think it was in Fight Club, 9 times out of 10 it's an electric razor.
Thank you.
I think, yeah.
Okay. So, our highest voted question regarding not using JS for full stack, is it really a language problem or more of an awareness problem? Having unsecured API routes is not the fault of the language.
It's not the fault of the language, definitely, and it's not also the fault of the full stack. It's more of the exposure surface that is given today by the fast developed JS frameworks and libraries. Unless you're really up to date, and when for example React goes from one version to the other, there are so many changes that everyone has to keep up with, and it's very difficult, and there's a lot to keep up with, and there are best practices that completely change and so on. And I think that is what also is introducing vulnerabilities as well, especially if you have to build yourself the full authentication and authorization and so on. I don't think that's necessary, especially if you're business oriented and you just want to go and deliver. So it's not, definitely not, of course, definitely not a JavaScript. In fact, you can still use JavaScript, and that's what the monoliths also through inertia and the other gluers actually do. You still can use, but the isolation is what matters. By isolating, you reduce that exposure.
Well, for my 2 cents are like, if you don't know about it, how can you secure it? So if you don't know what's in your system, how can you have an attempt at securing it? So that's basically it's a design philosophy. So basically, the attack surface that isn't there will not hurt you. There are many ways of achieving reasonable attack surface, and well, Zak has presented one, and there are lots of others, and it's not language related or framework related. It's much more of a frame of mind.
And just to build on what you said as well, in terms of the choosing the language, as I was showing in one of the slides that the NSA had published this report about those memory safe languages and so on. And I think people tend to assume that if they write code in Go, for example, because it's been said by the NSA that it's safe in this list, and then because they write in Go, then it means that it's safe. Absolutely not. You can also write unsafe code and an unsafe back end with a safe, memory safe language. That's clearly can happen.
I've often said it as a joke that if you followed security news, you know that the security systems have been the fault, the blame for many of the security breaches these days. So if you are doing a security product, just having security in the product name is not enough. So you have to actually do something about the security.
Yeah, I mean, this is a relief. Obviously, it's not like we all are going to go and change the language we are using currently. So, people have been scared today very well, both apparently in accessibility and this security subject. Any ideas how could we promote security topics and be... well, anyways, some practices from more positive viewpoint.
Yeah, I was hoping that you would tell me. So because, well, I'm from the scare people department, and you are from the do things well department. So I think that we should cooperate, and that's why I was trying to, after scaring you a bit, trying to approach it from the side that if you do your job properly and take care of the system, make sure that it's maintained well, that reduces the amount of errors. And in our project, I know that that's oversimplification. In our project, we actually start from the management side. So if you are not given a chance to do your job properly, well, that's obviously a game over from the get-go. So first, management needs to realize that security is a thing, quality is a thing, and you need to allocate resources to it. Middle managers need to understand, project managers need to understand that security is not the end of level boss, it's not an afterthought, it's a feature, it's one of the features, it's one of the things that you need to do when you, well, do your product.
It's, I would say, to think more positively about it, I think it's a matter of semantics. You can see a glass that's half full or half empty, depending on how you talk about it. So I think flipping those, for example, use cases or bad scenarios in terms of lessons learned and how we could not allow it to happen again, or how could we prevent it. So I think in terms of semantics and language, having a more positive language is how we would reframe it. Because fact is a fact. If a hack happens, but then you can look at it as this is doomsday, it happened, we're all doomed, or you can also look at it as, well, we have learned lessons, this is not going to happen again.
That's an excellent point. I think there has been a cultural shift over the last decade of people thinking that publishing that there was a security breach is actually transparency, it's actually the responsible thing to do. And I would love to encourage that further. So if everyone says that, okay, we tried our best, this still happened, mistakes do happen, that disasters do happen, and this is what worked for us, and let's all learn from this and move forward. And I think, I personally hope that people, I know that in traditional industries, many people look up at the companies that are really open about their security, also the faults.
And to build on that also, in terms of mindset and setting expectations from the get-go, from the basics, is that we tend to assume that When a piece of software is delivered by a brand name, it's bulletproof and it's sealed and it's 100% safe, but never 100% safe exists. So I think we have to also be tolerant with ourselves and those companies and the institutions that these things can happen, and it's part of the industry and part of life. So
yeah, maybe also try to document that. I know that some projects are documenting that this is the threat model that we are building against. If your threat model doesn't match ours, well, you should proceed with caution.
I'll build on that. We're just like building and building. It's like an LLM conversation going right now. I had actually in the workshop 2 days ago somebody asking me about how could we be off the grid and use LLMs in a safe and private way and so on. The discussion was very interesting, and my recommendation is that never assume that anything is safe, and just do your best in terms of that. So.
Yeah, I like the idea of like bringing this culture to the companies, that it's because like often if something happens, people start to panic and then they start fighting the people to point finger at. So making it more like, you know, this happens to everyone. Don't don't fire everyone. No. So there are more high-level frameworks that do things like hiding secrets from your logs automatically. Should devs use more high-level frameworks that do a lot of this type of security stuff out of the box?
Yes.
Yes, but part of your whole threat model. Because again, you said the key word that was very important. Hashtag threat model is super, super important. The person who asked me at the workshop was asking me, how can I protect and be safe? And my immediate first question was, do you want to protect yourself from who? That's the question. Are you protecting yourself from state actors who want to hack you and destroy your whole house grid infrastructure? Which I think is very unlikely. Or are you protecting yourself from some Python bots who are scanning around and just crawling and eventually stealing your cloud files with personal identifiable information? So who are you protecting from is key. And when you have a web app, then I would guess the number one is just bots and scripts like that who are just randomly. And then if you're a highly controversial individual who makes inflammatory, nonsensical statements, well, you're going to be targeted by individuals who really want to settle score with you. So you better also not leave your schema visible on JSON. So again, your threat model against who you're protecting is very important. But yes, use them, the short answer.
Yeah, if you are doing code for others, talk to your customers about their threat models. So that's just the same thing, but...
Let's talk a bit about AI. So which threats does AI introduce to software development?
Yeah, well, I kind of iterated it in the presentation, but I'll try to phrase it differently. It's a bit like fire. It's a good tool when it's in your stove. It's a bad tool when it's in your walls. So basically, you need to make sure that you understand what you are doing and don't skip the quality assurance, don't skip the testing, don't skip the security parts.
Yes, don't skip those parts, but I think that paper that you showed, Jussi, was very, very on point. Intentionality is very important. You have to know what you're doing. You have to know the architecture of what you're building with. If you're building on React and then you're just counting on Next.js and you're counting on the LLM to just fix for you and build the whole auth system, I think that's just makes me cringe right here. So it's very important that you know the architecture, you know the documentation and what you're doing. And I was also showing in the presentation how the LLMs can give certain coders this overconfidence, and the LLM, not the coders overconfidence, the LLM is responding in an overconfident way, making the coders trust that. So always check, always be intentional, know what you're doing. And the best analogy I could give is, would you actually trust, would you get on a plane if you would know that it is driven automatically by an AI and there's no human pilot? And you're flying with your kid. You would not, despite that AI is amazing. Why? Because there's something called liability and trust. And you will always feel safe knowing that there's a 30 years experience, 20 years experience pilot who's there, still using AI, but he's there. And I think it's the same thing. You have to know what you're doing, and intentionality is important. And that's also why I think that coders are not doomed yet.
Yeah, I think there's a maxim in security that there are two things that you cannot outsource. One is understanding, and the other thing is responsibility. So that really sums it up in a different way.
I mean, I think a lot of companies are really pushing developers to use AI nowadays for reasons I'm not maybe so the person to say, but maybe we can use this Zak's example for the managers pushing that would you put your child to the plane? Do you really want me to give this tool the hands to really ruin our service?
Well, I've often compared LLMs to interns. So basically you have somebody who's just graduated from school or hasn't yet graduated from school, and you have them as an intern to do simple tasks. And would you trust that intern to perform, make code for your crown jewels, make code for authentication, make code for the important things without checking it? No, you wouldn't. And that well applies to AI.
Would you then trust a lead developer, $03, $200 per month LLM to do that?
No.
Oh, there's still a few more questions. Any ideas on how to shift left, meaning getting security and compliance to the design process from early on?
An excellent question. I don't think either of us really mentioned shift left, but...
Oh, sorry. So any ideas on how to shift left, meaning getting security and compliance to the design process from the early on?
Yeah. So I don't remember that either of us mentioned shift left, but that's one of like the holy grails in developing things. Make sure that related to security, make sure that you don't do specification that is insecure, you don't do design that is insecure, because, well, it's pretty darn hard, if not impossible, to fix some of those things later. And I wish I had the answer, so I have some ideas about the answer. So I think that's why I told about that, for example, our program first tries to convince the managers. So that's where we thought that the biggest bang for the buck is. How to convince the managers? I think there's a lot of, at least research about the relative costs related to software development. So when a bug is when the software has, in traditional software world, where the software package is actually being shipped to the customers, when the bug is found at that stage, it costs multitudes more than it's fixed before deploying the software. So I think those kinds of examples should be good for the bean counters. But I know this is a difficult battle.
Well, actually, I would add, and I would respond that requirements and all of those constraints, regulatory constraints, are actually the cornerstone of what dictates the architecture you will be adopting. There's a reason why I'm going to be a little bit caricatural or stereotypical, but there's a reason why there's Java in hospitals used, for example, in hospital enterprise or enterprise in general. There's a reason why .NET and C# are used in certain institutions, and so I think it depends on the end user. If they have very strict compliance and so on, GDPR and CE and patient data, for example, and so on, then you definitely, your architecture and your frameworks will be dictated by that. And there are definitely frameworks that facilitate that because they have very well documented and very well provided libraries that are included. For example, in PHP, if I would have a client who has a lot of constraints for GDPR or patient data and they are really strict, I would rather go with Symfony than with Laravel, for example, despite I love Laravel, it's very productive. But Symfony has a kind of a more complicated structure, but in terms of compliance, you will be the happiest down the road. So that is very important, I think, and that will dictate the choice. The same as for other non-web, for example, the aerospace industry, they have specific subset of C++ and so on. So yes, it dictates actually the choice.
Yeah, and just to remind me, I did tell you that all software products introduced in the EU will have some sort of regulation in 27, so that will be coming, and use that.
Yeah, because I feel like maybe sometimes managers are not the people that you have to sell the security. It's sometimes your fellow developers. Well, I mean, you showed us that you're creating some kind of like guidance and some materials that people can use. But is there already some place with some, something like easily approachable, so it doesn't feel like, oh my God, I have to spend weeks to learn everything to make me a better developer?
Yeah, we are planning to release some easier to read papers. We published a short guidebook for software developers. It's a bit high level. A couple of years back, there's one from the Digital Services Agency that's actually pretty good. The long versions, there are plenty of them about building security in maturity model and those kinds of things. So I'm afraid many of the standards are rather longish, but for example, some of our material and some of the UK counterparts from NCSC UK are pretty good introductory materials that you could start from.
Yeah.
Nothing to add. He's the gold standard.
But what did you use when you started to, introduce all this to your process?
Well, OWASP and all the best practices, for example, like when I gave the example of the MongoDB ransomware, I checked still if there was a breach in those, but I was relatively confident that it wasn't coming from there, and it wasn't. So best practices, just follow them blindly, don't question them, don't try to be creative, they've been there for a reason, and stay updated. Just keep looking, just a newsletter somewhere about critical vulnerabilities. If you're working on React, just subscribe to CVE React. And you will just you will be updated about what's happening. You would not be, your /login will not be circumvented. Things like that. So I think just staying up to date with something that is minimal. You don't have to be, overkill it, but best practices and just stay up to date. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jussi and Zak. I think we can go for a break now. Are you going to stay for the next half an hour when we have the coffee break?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so if you had more questions, these mics, I'm so sorry. These guys are very approachable, so have a talk during coffee. So I'll see you 3:30.